you, Prerna?
Very well. Thank you so much for joining us at Autocar Professional. And you've always been a great source of information and insight for us. We wanted to explore a story on how, like, again, we've been hearing about Tesla coming to India. But then it's always interesting to hear your perspective on the global market and, put things into context for the Indian market as well. So, like, I was just going through Tesla's numbers. For the year 2024, their production of Model 3 and Y has fallen by 5%, which makes up 95% of their portfolio. And then revenues have also gone down by 6%. Profits are flattish. So how do you, let's start with that. How do you read the whole market, EV market, and then how with Tesla making a huge dent in it in the global context first?
So, when we talk about the global electric vehicle market, it's important to mention the differences that there are among the regions, because we can say that it's going quite well in China. It's where it is growing the fastest, and it's followed by Europe, which is going at a different speed, and then what I call the rest of the world, including the US and the emerging markets, where they are struggling sometimes or their adoption is taking longer than expected. So that's pretty much the situation we have right now. But in terms of offer in the three of these markets, it's growing fast. We are seeing more choices, more competitive cars, and better prices. Of course, there are big things to work on. Still, the affordability of the electric cars is a big issue, but also infrastructure and the government's role on this, because sometimes it's not clear regarding the incentives and tariffs now. So that's pretty much the situation for the electric vehicle car market. Tesla, well, even though it posted 1% decrease on its deliveries last year, it was still the top selling electric vehicle maker in the world. This is, of course, I'm excluding the plug-in hybrids, which are also available from other brands, such as
And gain
BYD.
popularity globally.
Yeah. So if you exclude the plug-in hybrids and only concentrate on electric cars, Tesla was the biggest last year, which is remarkable considering the different challenges the brand is having.
Yeah.
The European demand is not growing anymore. The US is not really enthusiastic about driving electric cars, and in China, Tesla has more competition. And also considering that they only have two models, as you just said, because the other two or the other three, which are Model X, Model S, and Cybertruck, are mainly for the US, and they are
Yeah.
not.
They're not volume gainers
No,
anyway.
no, right. So, considering all of these factors, well, Tesla result in 2024 was not that bad, considering all of this. But the thing is that it needs to find sources of growth, because currently most of its operations are depending on the US, China, and Europe. But it happens that at least the US and Europe are not growing anymore. These are mature markets where you barely find sources of growth. And China is full of competition. So if you want to keep growing, you need to find other regions or other countries where you can find opportunities.
But that's a bit of a tricky situation because, like you said, these markets are not growing. Even there's a capacity glut in China, Germany, and US was supposed to add additional capacity. That hasn't happened. So, and in this scenario, coming to a market like India, which again is not known for volume play when it comes to vehicles for more than 30 lakh price point. So isn't that a bit of a trouble for Tesla in the long term, at least like in the say 5 to 6 years?
Well, look, they currently Tesla has four major plants right now: two in the U.S., one in China, and one in Germany. With those four plants, they are basically already supplying the demand in Europe, U.S., and China. What they need now is to find where to invest or where to open new factories, depending on the potential of those markets, but especially, particularly in those markets where there is growth or there is a potential. India is one example. India is one of the markets that is growing faster among the top 10 in the world. It's already the third largest. It outsold Japan last year. And it has, unlike Japan, unlike the US, it has a growth potential. I mean, the Indian car market can be much bigger than what it is right now. And we are already seeing some electric vehicles initiatives in India. So Tesla must be in India. I mean, when we talk about its future, India must be part of Tesla.
Okay, fair point. But you were talking about EV demand globally. What would be your outlook and projections? Because for sure, I know like you're looking at it market wise, but for sure demand, the pace of growth has slowed. And
Mm.
in some markets in Europe and the US, they're even talking about going back to cleaner ice, cleaner diesel, cleaner ice, right? So, in that context, where do you see your projections when it comes to the global EV market?
Well, the first clear thing is that electrification is not happening as fast as anyone as everybody thought. So this means that those goals of driving only electric cars in 10 years are not likely to happen. The combustion engine cars are going to stay longer because they are also improving in terms of emissions, in terms of consumption. And so that's one of the things. Then you have um, more competition. I mean, the fact that electric vehicles, the demand is not growing as fast doesn't mean that they are not going to be there. They are already a reality. And regions such as Europe, for example, sooner or later will shift totally to electric, but it's taking longer. So in the meantime, what companies like Tesla can do is just to make use of the economies of scale, so to reduce prices. That's what Tesla has been doing over the last 3 years, and gain market share. What to do in those markets where the shift is not happening as fast as expected? Well, you need to survive. And if you are only making electric vehicles where you need to come up with more models, more in more segments, and lower prices,
Yeah,
that's
again,
what you have to do.
yeah, that's a good point. Even their portfolio is really limited. And for a market like India, all the global players that we've seen, if they don't do product refreshes at like smaller intervals because the market is becoming a lot more aggressive, the demand is really there, they tend to fail. So, even with a limited portfolio, a lot of experts, and there's a belief that their go to market strategy in other markets that has worked might not work in India. So they will have to sort of look at a localized approach that might involve, for example, re-looking at their direct to customer sales model, which hasn't worked in India, which Mercedes Benz also tried. So what could be the go-to-market strategy? And it has to be localized, right?
Well, yes. First of all, it has to be localized. They need to produce in India, and they need to provide what Indian consumers buy, which are mainly small cars. Because when you look at the current lineup of Tesla, the smallest one is the Model 3, and it's 4.7 meters long. It's a sedan, and that's not what the majority of people in India buy or can afford,
That's again a degrowing segment.
right? So actually, when you look at the the strategies implemented by the non-Indian car makers in India, all of them, the ones that are somehow succeeding, they is because they adapted their products to the local needs. And that's why you get a quite unique quite unique market in terms of cars that you barely find in other regions, because India has its own regulation and its own things, right? So first of all, Tesla needs to work on a small car, definitely. Not only cheaper car, but a small car. And that's the tricky thing, because so far the success of Tesla has been based on just very few models, very similar, because Model 3
Two,
and Model Y are,
two for that matter. Yeah, just two
yeah,
models for that matter. Yeah.
right, which are at the end the same vehicle, just different approach and positioning. But at the end, Model Y and Model 3 are based on the same platform, and everything is very similar. So part of the success is explained by that, because it's easier to concentrate on only two models that have appeal in the Europeans, Chinese, and Americans. India is totally different. It has a different regulation. It has a different culture, and these cars are not what they buy. So they need to work on this, and of course on cheaper models, because even though they've have done a lot of progress in terms of prices, the Model 3 is not expensive anymore. Well, for the Indian standards, it's a very expensive car.
Correct. In India, it's more like a premium luxury kind of a product, whereas for other markets, it's in a different category.
Right.
Which is why, like, while India has a red carpet rolled out for Mr. Musk and a lot of, conversations going on around that, people who, they like, even outside the affordability set of certain customers are like really excited on social media, and then like as if they'll buy it tomorrow, and they were just waiting for it to happen. And but whereas, like, there's a calculated approach that it might not be enough to move the needle when it comes to the luxury segment in India. It will barely have an impact. What is your view on that? Because we need to look at it from a long term perspective. You're talking about volumes, that Tesla needs India for volumes, but those volumes will not be able to garner in a matter of, say, 2 to 3 years. It will take a long term approach from their side.
Look, the latest information we have from Tesla, not for India but in general, is that they are working on a low cost, or let's say a cheaper version of the Model Y for China. So this means that they are already identifying the need to go downwards in terms of prices and product, because that's where volumes are, and that's what most of the emerging markets, such as India, are buying. So that's a good sign, because it's telling us that finally Tesla is seriously considering the emerging markets, because as I said, the current lineup is not appealing to these markets. So they need to work on these cars, and it seems that they are doing so. So, however, we know that now that Elon Musk is part of the U.S. government, we know how the negotiations are, and of course they will ask for full access to the Indian market with their models as they are. Uh,
Yeah.
even if the Indian government accepted the terms, and let's say that they would have free access to the Indian market, well, the other question is, I mean, your car is too big. Is it really the right car for the Indian roads? Is it the right car for the Indian parking lots? I'm afraid not, because you guys have limited infrastructure. The roads are not the best for this very low cars.
Yeah.
So they would need to, of course, to adapt, even though if they had free access to the Indian market, which is not going to be the case.
Hmm. And obviously, with the entire thing about tariffs going on, that will also have an impact on how we open up to Musk, and the reciprocal taxes and everything. So, will that also sort of have an impact? Like, that's for everyone to see in the future.
Well, yes, yes. We still need to know what's going to happen to these negotiations. The interesting thing is that India is on the radar for the Trump administration, and
Yeah, very much.
he thinks, and well, he agrees with Elon Musk that India should be the next step on Tesla's global expansion, and that's why we're seeing these talks and these things happening. But as the things are right now, I think they are very far away from reaching getting to reaching an agreement. Also because India has also started its own electrification.
With a
mm,
lot of local players taking the lead, which is very encouraging.
yes. So you have its local car makers already investing on these cars. So they want to protect what they have invested on so far, right? So it's going to be tricky to find a solution. I think India is very important for Tesla, but also Tesla is very important for India because India needs also to get into this global electrification trend
Yeah.
in the best way possible, and Tesla can be a very good candidate. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And also, I think the bigger opportunity for Tesla lies with Starlink, which is their low cost internet, and how that could sort of disrupt the market. And Tesla is just obviously it's made a door in entry into the door, but the real game for like real game changer for the company could be Starlink, and that's what like everyone is talking about, that that's their main strategy. And obviously they plan to export from India, and that could be another way they could sort of make money through scale, and like you said, the low cost model. So these are like real things that like Tesla needs to consider before sort of considering the Indian market.
And I think India could become also like its main center of operations for the emerging markets. Because I mean, India, Tesla doesn't have any presence, any big presence, neither in Latin America nor in Southeast Asia.
So
So
access to emerging markets is a way for them to sort of, yeah,
yes, because in this way you have access to the world's third largest car market with a big growth potential, and at the same time you could have eventually access to other emerging economies that would also buy these cheaper and more adapted cars for the emerging markets, right?
yeah. But it's very interesting. I mean, global players look at the Indian market and they look at like the population growth and the kind of potential it has, but then they forget that the total addressable market is really small. Like for example, even today, if yeah, from sizable markets, India still has like 1% penetration in the luxury space. We might not even call Tesla luxury vehicles globally, but here, if they sell at 40 lakh plus, that would be considered like a
Mm.
entry level luxury space. So which is really small in India, 1%, or and it hasn't moved for so many years. That's the main issue. So
Right.
like these are challenges that a lot of other global players like Mercedes Benz, BMW, Porsche, etc. are sort of grappling with.
Well, look, yes, I think in Musk's mind, when he thinks of India, he's not thinking of that 1%. He wants to be a big player in India in terms of volume, because otherwise it makes no sense. What's the point of just selling very few units in India? Yes, I mean, you already sell them in Mexico, you already sell them in some random emerging markets, but that's not changing the thing. They need to find the right way to sell a lot of cars in India because India is going to be its source of growth in the coming years. And the only way to do it is by adapting what they have or come up with very specific models for a country like India. But otherwise, it's not going to be. And the other thing is, we need to understand here, even though in terms of price, Tesla would be considered luxury in India. Tesla is not a direct competitor of BMW or Mercedes because it's not
Yeah,
premium. It's not a premium car maker,
yeah,
and that's what they have allowed also them to grow fast because they are somewhere between the mainstream and premium car segments. So they have quite interesting, appealing electric cars with a price that is not as expensive as a premium car, but is a bit more than mainstream. In India, because of prices, it would be positioned as luxury, but that's not the case, and that's not what Elon Musk wants from India.
So it's a volume game that they're sort of looking at.
Right.
Would you see once it makes an appearance in the Indian market, local EV players, especially like now with Mahindra's B6, XEV, and all these new sexy products coming into the market, will that have an impact, or do you see more impact on the luxury space? Because you made a very interesting point that it's not competing with the Mercedes and BMWs of the world. I think it'll have more impact on what Mahindra is trying to do with premiumizing EVs, right?
But it depends on what product they can develop for India, because if they, I mean, what they want is what Tesla wants to achieve is just free access to India with their current lineup, right? If that's the case, the Tesla Model 3 is not going to be a rival to these latest electric vehicles from Mahindra, because we're talking of small SUVs for Mahindra against a mid-size sedan. So very much we're not there, right? So, but that's not going to be the case. If they adapt their strategy to India, and if they work on a specific models for India, I'm sure they would consider targeting the small SUV segments to compete against these products from India, because that is what actually what the Indian consumers are buying, small SUVs. And that would, in that case, it would be a direct competitor of those cars, and of course, Mahindra and Tata would have a direct, a big rival at home.
Got it. And do you think local partnership would make sense? There were
Mm.
reports of them exploring partnerships with Tata, TVS, and like other companies. And like, for example, how JSW has done with MG, and even Volkswagen and Skoda has been exploring local partners. So do you think if, like, for example, there's an industrialist group that is sort of interested in automotive manufacturing, and those kind of local collaborations could work within the automotive industry and even outside?
I think that's the easiest way for everybody. It would be the easiest way for Tesla, the easiest way for the Indian government, and the best way for the local car makers. Because on one side, you have Tesla with a big know-how on making efficient and competitive electric cars, and on the other side, you have Mahindra or Tata making already what the Indians want, which are small SUVs and with a awareness and history in India. And in that case, also for the Indian government would be even better, because that way you can keep them all happy. At the end of the day, this collaboration would help Mahindra or Tata, because they would have access to more know-how, and would prevent having a big rival such as Tesla at home. And at the same time, Tesla would benefit not only because of the products made by these car makers, but also because of the dealership network and all the second things that happens in the aftermarket industry in India. That's which is very tricky. We've seen a lot of failures from Western car makers because they were not able to come to respond to this aftermarket challenge. And Mahindra and India and Tata, they know very well. I mean, if you want to cooperate, you cooperate with the biggest one and the ones who know. So in this case, Tesla has the know-how, Mahindra or Tata have the product and the network.
Yeah, but it's I think one of the most difficult deals to crack once they
Of
get
course,
done.
of course, but you know what? Tesla has been having these products for years now. They take a lot of years to come up with an all new model, because that's part of their business, and actually it's working because they make money. So I think I don't see Tesla just developing a unique model for India,
Correct. That's
because
not practical.
it's not practical, and it goes against its way of working and making profits, right? So a collaboration would save that money in terms of a development, and would give Tesla access to India.
Yeah, but that's again a huge challenge for them because that's
Yes.
also easier said than done.
Right. Yes. Yes.
So lastly, I wanted to understand you explained the global market very well in the beginning. There is competition, especially look at the China market with BYD and other local players coming up. So all these local markets are sort of there's this entire focus shift of making like even America is moving that way in terms of making in America while supporting local production. India is going that way. China was already very strong on that. So based on that, how do you project Tesla's growth in 2025? How do you see the year ending for the company now that it has plans to for other expansion in global markets as well? Considering the competitive landscape is really warming up to the company and becoming stronger.
Well, at the beginning of this year has not been easy for Tesla for many reasons. As you know, Elon Musk is actively participating in politics. So this means that his brands, his products are part of the political debate. And that's not helping in economy in regions such as Europe. And of course, when you look at the results so far, they are very negative, especially in Europe. But also because that's the other part that the media doesn't tell, which is also because its top selling model, the Model Y, is going through a model changeover. So they just introduced an update, and when this happens in the industry, we usually see a drop in sales of the exiting version because they are giving access to the new one, and the introduction of the new one takes time. So my answer is always about, let's give some time, let's wait at least 3 months to better understand what's going to happen to Tesla. Because when you look at the detail for Tesla in Europe, at least, yes, it's dropping a lot, but the Model Y is having big drops because currently some people that wanted to buy it probably they won't find any availability, and or they are waiting for the new one to come. But at the same time, of course, there are political reasons behind the drop, because when you look at the Model 3, for example, which is the other big seller, it is not going through the model changeover. It was this thing happened a year ago, so it should be selling well right now, but it's not the
It's
case,
not,
at least
yeah.
in January and February. So the 2025 is going to be, let's say, challenging for Tesla, but I think the new version of the Model Y is gonna sell well in China and the US. And let's see how Europe
Response to it, yeah.
goes on, responds to it in the coming months.
But for sure, it'll have to sort of rejig its strategy to sort of it has to be horses for courses and sort of rejig its strategy based on the market and not just like an overall envelope strategy for every market it sort of enters into.
Yes, each market is different. Each market has its own needs. But the key of the success of Tesla so far has been that it has been able to come up with a product that is appealing in these three big markets, which are the largest in the world: Europe, the US, and China. And with the same cars, you see the same Model Y you see in China is the same do you see in the US or in Europe. And that's the key of the success, because it can save money in terms of production, and with only two models. Of course, each market is changing, each market is demanding different things, and that's the tricky part when you need to adapt what you have to the different market needs. And India
Yeah.
can be a big challenge, but it's also a big opportunity.
hmm Do you see a popularity of hybrids sort of taking away a bit of a pie of what Tesla's growth could have been?
Hybrids are also a big rival to Tesla. They are not fully electric, but they are the best solution in many economies or many countries where the electric vehicles infrastructure is not there yet. Because with a hybrid, at least the full hybrids, you don't need to charge them, but you still have a battery that allows you to drive electric for some kilometers. And that's why actually Toyota is the biggest player in the world, because a big part of their sales is because of hybrids. So the
Yeah.
hybrids are mainly popular not only in the developed economies, but mainly in the developing economies and
Yeah,
the
even in
emerging
India
markets.
as well, for that matter.
Right,
The Japanese are going the hybrid way and they sort of see a long term growth and an intermediate technology till the time EVs fully take over.
right.
Yeah,
So that's why I say it's the best solution for now, because they are not as expensive as electric cars, but and at the same time you don't have issues with infrastructure or charging and so on. The thing is that the regulation sooner or later will ban them, so they won't be enough.
yeah. All right. On that note, it's a lot remains to be seen in terms of how the company performs once it decides to set up a manufacturing, whether it's going that route, how it plans to localize. That's again going to be a key driver. Any final thoughts on how well or how deeply penetrated could it sort of go on once it decides to sort of enter the Indian market?
Tesla, you mean?
Yes.
It's hard to tell, because if they develop a dedicated product for India, I think Tesla would have a big success in India. Even if Tesla is not available in many markets, it's a global brand. Everybody knows about Tesla, and I think when most of the people around the world think of an electric car, they think of Tesla. It's
Yeah,
in the top of mind, and
for sure.
it's the brand that put the electric vehicles for everybody. I mean,
It has
everybody,
that aspirational value for sure.
right?
Yeah.
And so when you have this good image, of course, it's changing because of politics and all the things happening right now. But still, Tesla is a reference. And when you have these credentials, you can have a big potential wherever you go. But you need to, of course, sell what the consumers are buying. It's
Yeah.
not just as simple as just selling the Model 3 or Model Y, just because everybody buys them in China, Europe, and the US. No, the rest of the world is different. The emerging markets count for almost one fourth of the global car sales in the global car sales. So it's a big market, but you cannot treat these markets as you do in the developed economies, because they are different. The culture is different. The infrastructure is different. The government is different. Everything is different. So you need to come with a different product. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Very interesting. And you've summed up so well. Thank you so much for your time and speaking to us.